Hi there, my friends. It's been a minute. I have a deck that I wanted to show you today because I really like it. I had not heard of this before, but the other day my friend Liz said, "Oh, I got this new deck, the Neo Tarot, and I really like it." And I went and looked it up and I said, "I like it too." And I immediately ordered it and she laughed at me. But I do really like it. And I've had, this came in a little while ago. I've had some time to look through it and experience it a little bit, and I really think it's great. So I have never heard of this publisher before, and there's some interesting things. I do not think that this is a company that has published a lot of tarot decks. Hardy Grant Books, it looks like, is the publisher, and I'll tell you the name of the illustrator in a minute, but the author of the book is Jericho Mendeber. So this is a Rider-Waite-Smith based tarot, and there's a couple things right out of the gate that I think are really successful about it. One is that it manages to be Rider-Waite-Smith and at the same time neutral. And it's neutral in a lot of ways. It's neutral from a cosmology standpoint, and it's neutral from an emotional standpoint, and I'll talk about that as we walk through. The other thing is, I think that it is just really beautiful, and a lot of decks that are neutral and that are modern can feel a little cold or a little distant, a little harsh, a little digital. This is very sharp, but it's not harsh. It's very crisp, but it's not cold. So I think it's got a lot going for it. The retail price is $35. I paid about $10 less for that on Amazon, and then I actually saw that it was even less than that on Barnes & Noble. So just keep that in mind. So let's take a look. It comes in this large-ish box. The cards are not this large. The cards are tarot deck sized. And it's a really nice box. I mean, mine's a little sort of scuffed and beat up, but that tends to be the case with anything mass market. And then it opens up and you've got the cards inset here in a box. And then the book. Now the book, I have to say, it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. It's glued to the thing. So you literally cannot take the book out unless you cut it out. And that involves cutting off the last page. And the last page is interesting because it's about the artist, Diana Ruiz, a visual artist and illustrator based in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Love this art, and I recommend reading her bio because you'll probably have seen she's done work for the New York Times, the New Yorker, Vogue, Nylon, Rolling Stone, MTV, OkCupid, Vice. I mean, this is a really talented artist. The book is really nice, despite the fact that you cannot take it out of the fucking package. Each card is displayed in full color. There's a meaning, a reversed meaning, a self-care meaning, and then some little moments of themes, elements, and then an affirmation. For example, this is the Page of Wands, and the affirmation says, "I embrace new journeys and the learning experiences they bring," which is very Page of Wandsy. And then let me just pull this up so I can read you the self-care thing. Self-care. Think about your favorite method of self-expression. Not the one you're best at, the one you're most interested in. Is it painting? Is it collage? Find some materials and start experimenting. Ignore the perfectionist voice in your head and just have fun with it. This isn't about creating a beautiful finished product. It's about allowing yourself to embrace your creativity and simply play, which I think is really nice. And what I like about that is if you're not a tarot reader, or if you have someone who is interested in tarot but doesn't feel confident yet, they could really use this as a self-care or self-exploration tool, a little bit more like an oracle deck, by pulling a card and then going to the book and reading the self-care meaning, for example. So it's a really nice book. I haven't read the whole thing. I tend not to read guidebooks, but I did read a little bit about what the intent was, and the intent was really to create something modern, something universal, something for everybody, and something that was empowering, which I think is lovely. So that's the book and the weird situation with the box. The cards themselves come in their own box, and it's a nice, sturdy-ish. It says "Know Thyself" on the inside. So we'll push that aside. And we'll look at the cards. This will probably go relatively quickly because it's a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and it's not revolutionary in the sense that the cards are wildly reinterpreted. They're not. They are very, very in the tradition, but again, with a neutrality of spirituality and interpretation that is nice. So I'm gonna zoom in, not out. And so I can see this a little better. The style, the style probably won't appeal to everybody, but it's very clean and crisp. And oh, I meant to bring these out. So it reminds, can I reach? I can't reach. It reminds me of two decks that I really like, the Spirit Within Tarot and the Sheridan Douglas Tarot, which are both very clean. This one's a little warmer than both of those, just from a like color palette standpoint, but equally lovely and equally a deck that I would reach for, to especially the Spirit Within. These two I think are decks I would reach for just a general reading for someone who I didn't know. So the reason I like neutrality in decks is that I think every card has light and shadow in it. No card is inherently good or bad. The Tower, the Three of Swords, the Devil, Death, the 9 and 10 of Swords are as good as they are bad, depending on the context they're in. And I think particularly for a new reader, the visceral emotional hit that you get when you see Death or when you see the 10 of Swords it's hard to, it's unnerving. It's hard to sort of separate yourself from the shock of that moment. But to me, there is no good or bad card. It is the card in context to the question and the other cards in the reading and the reader and the querent, and all of those things will tell you whether something good or bad is happening. So each of the cards themselves has no inherent positive or negative quality. And so when I'm looking for decks that I use a lot, I'm looking for either a balance or across all the cards so that they feel equally weighted, so that half the deck will feel positive or negative, you know what I mean? Or even better, that something is neutral across the board and the artist hasn't imposed a value judgment on the card. The reader gets to do that in the context. And I think that this deck does that really nicely. It takes the Rider-Waite-Smith images and places them in a limbo that is really helpful as a reader. All right, so, and I think that's really, really helpful for new readers to get used to the fact that the Tower is good as much as the Lovers is, or as much as the Fool is. And the Fool is bad as much as the Devil is, say. The Fool we're looking at here can be complete and total freedom, and it can be complete and total absence of responsibility. So let's look. Now, the cardstock you're gonna not like if you have gotten used to the gorgeous cardstocks of indie decks. It's very cardboardy. In fact, my Fool card came a little chipped at the top, and there's one card where I don't even know where it is now. One of the corners isn't quite well cut. Oh, it's right there. You probably can't see it. Yeah, right there. Boop. It's cardboard though, so I don't think, it's not a $50 deck. It is a little expensive at its retail price, but again, I didn't even pay retail, and I've seen it for less than I purchased it for. So, it shuffles fine. I didn't think it was going to. I was a little worried about that, but I'll show you that shuffle. All right, here's the Fool. Oh, and here's the back. I like this kind of Art Deco bag. The Magician. The High Priestess. Now there's a modern kick to this deck for sure, but there's also a timelessness to it, which I really, really enjoy. I mean, as soon as I saw some pictures of the cards that Liz sent me, I knew I liked it. And then when I saw it in person, I immediately liked it. It's very vector, so it's like patches of color, but again, it doesn't feel cold, it doesn't feel distant, it feels warm and approachable and neutral all at the same time. So yeah, I mean, it's very geometric, it's very clean. I don't think there's a card that I've seen in the deck that I dislike, which is really rare for me. I'm not a big fan, as you know, of Wheels of Fortune, but I like this. There's a warmth to it that I often think is absent from that card. It's a beautiful strength card. The majors are unnumbered. You'll notice I put strength at 11 because that's a habit after a few years. But the majors aren't numbered, so you can put them any way you want them to. The Hanged Woman. I don't, it's interesting. Like, I think there's a push in modern tarot decks to make the Hanged Man more, more gender specific to women or more gender neutral, because the Hanged Man has evolved into the value judgment of the Hanged Man is that it's a positive, looking at new experiences in a different way, or meditate. For me, like, again, it doesn't matter what the gender of the hanged person is, because it may be about that, but it also may be about arrested development, and it may be about consequences. These cards have light and shadow for me. So when a deck tries to rebalance things like that, sometimes to me it just, the Hanged Man isn't good or bad. It's the context that matters. And, whatever. It's taken me a long time to come to that too. So I definitely, when I started reading, was in the Hanged Man is a good thing category, because you want to have as many good cards as possible. Here's Death. I think this is a really great set as a gift for someone who wants to start reading, because even the Death card, for example, isn't going to give you that emotional hit of the Grim Reaper. It's clearly Death, but there's something, gentler about it. It does err a little more on the positive side, but I think it's, again, fairly neutral. And that's balanced for me by the really negative cards that traditionally are the swords, are very neutral. They're the same Rider-Waite-Smith images, but the Devil. I really like this Tower card, really a lot. I know this border is going to bother people, but I don't mind it. I think it's really nice. Here's the Moon, which I really love. Those green. Green is one of my favorite colors. Here's the Sun. And Judgment. And the World. And so then we get into the suits. So here's the Ace of Wands. The Two of Wands. 3. So again, very Rider-Waite-Smith. It's a distillation in many ways of those Rider-Waite-Smith images. It's not, it's not a clone. It's definitely inspired by. But even here in the Five of Wands, you can see it's like, this might be playful. This might be not. This might be, whatever. There's like a neutrality to the expressions on the faces. Aren't telling you everything. The expressions are neutral, and that allows you then as a reader to read them in a neutral way. I really like this 7. Here's the 8. And the 9. The energy of a lot of the characters, it has a very dancerly quality to it, which I like. The postures, the body postures are very elegant. There's the Knight. The Queen. I really like this deck a lot. Here's the King of Wands. Here's the Ace of Cups. Here's the Two of Cups. Very gender neutral. Love that. Thank you. 3 of Cups. 4. Whoops. 5. 6. 7. I like this. I just really like this deck. Again, there's not a card I really don't like. The 10 of Cups, again, very gender neutral. Airs a little toward the masculine, but what is masculinity if not an assumption, right? Page. Knight. Queen. King. This is decidedly not a deck full of white people. So I celebrate that. There's the Two of Swords. So the Three of Swords, again, you get the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith image, but there's, you know, it's not as grim somehow. It's, you know, as neutral as an image like this can be, it is neutral, and I really do appreciate that. Here's the 4 and the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and again, you know, it's not terror in this card. It's neutral. It's neutral. It's more neutral than we're used to. And then same for this. And the colors neutralize it too. So you've got the dramatic image of someone with swords in the backs, but in these lavenders and pinks, it's a different energy. And I like that pull. I like that dichotomy. Here's the Page, the Knight, the Queen, the King. And then we finally get into the suit of Pentacles. Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you see 2 here. You have the, you know, if you know the Rider-Waite-Smith, you know the church, you know the snow, you know being locked outside. But this is, are they in détente? Are they resting? Is there conflict? 5s are about conflict anyway. You know, is this, it's the drama of the situation is not fully narrated for you. And so again, you can use other cards to help you decide. Here's the 6, the 7, the 8, the 9. I really love this. 9 of Pentacles is always one of my favorite cards. The 10, the Page, the Knight, Queen, and the King. All right, so let's see how this shuffles. It overhand shuffles really nicely. There's no sort of grip to the stock, so they slide together pretty well. I love that. This is the cardstock, the kind of cardstock that is going to chip. I mean, there's no avoiding that. Again, that doesn't bug me much because I like decks to look like they've been loved. So it overhand shuffles nicely, and it does riffle. It's thick, but you can do it, and I have small hands. I mean, this is the kind of cardstock that if you bend it, it'll crease. You know, it's not forgiving, but it's not so fragile that it can't take riffle shuffling, which is important because I'm a riffle shuffler. So I'll just lay some out so you can see them. But I do think in a spread, and I posted a 3-card reading on Instagram a little while ago, there's a real clean thing. You know what you're looking at right away, which is important to me because I like to be able to sense themes really quickly. So I'll just lay out 9 cards so we can see them. Now, I'm like crooked on the table. So this is one of my favorite readings, which if you watch my channel, you've heard me say many times, but I do like to do a 9-card. All these beautiful colors. It definitely has a spring, summer vibe to it. It's always interesting too to me when you spread out cards in a spread, how much different it looks when you look at the cards one at a time. because this, I mean, if you saw this, you'd say, oh, this deck is full of greens and pinks. There's far more color than that in this deck. And I like that. I like, you know, I can look at this reading and say there's so much green. I don't respond to color a whole lot, but one reason why is that decks are so frequently full of color. There's so much green in this that I could say this is a really verdant time for this person. You know, and I like being able to do that. And then I can see everything right away. So that makes me happy. And so I think it's really fantastic. I really like it a lot. I have, aside from that weird box book situation, aside from the cardstock, nothing really negative to say about it. As always, there are things I would have done differently. Yes, it's Rider-Waite-Smith, but another reason why I like a neutral Rider-Waite-Smith deck is that I don't feel like I have to use more traditional Rider-Waite-Smith meanings. I can use the numerology, and I don't necessarily have to explain away the meaning of the images. So the mood of the reading changes based on the dominant colors too, which I sort of like, and I think that that's really cool too. So this is the Neo Tarot, written by Jericho Mandibur and illustrated by Diana Ruiz, and it is by a publisher I have not heard of before, but I quite like it, and I think it's really successful. So hope you enjoyed this, and hope to talk to you soon. Be good.